You got both of them rolling?
Now, are you going to again say who you are? I think it's very important.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I like to give the date too. It is October 21st, 2005. We're at Telschow, here at Jerry and Georgianne's, tucked away in the splendor of autumn. We have 6 other beloved friends with us here. Everyone in this room has been to Shalom Mountain, has done process work at Shalom Mountain. My name is Roger Telschow. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I've been going to the mountain for 10 years. It's something that profoundly changed my life, and I think perhaps I might not have been awake for this whole part of my life had it not been for my experience at Shalom Mountain. So it's dear to me. Jerry Judd here. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jerry? Who are you?
Well, my name is Gerald J. Judd, and I was trained as a theologian, and I became a pastor for 17 years. Then I became a church executive for 15 years. And my journey, because I experienced a incredible shattering in my life, began to ask questions that I never asked before. And one of the major questions I asked was about the church, that there was almost an inevitable leveling off on the part of people who joined the church. I mean, they may have been excited about their spiritual journey, but that you can join the choir, or you can teach a Sunday school class, or maybe someday even become a deacon. Somehow,
Justice, keep talking.
I should keep on
You
talking,
should keep
but
talking.
you're also getting very close to my neck, and I may be saying the wrong thing.
Go for it.
Anyhow, I became very alarmed about the fact that the institutional churches do not make possible for intimacy to occur in the church. And that without intimacy, there is no dangerous threat. And until we become not only intrigued, but even frightened about staying stuck in our journeys, I felt that we needed to find a way in which people could grow spiritually and awaken to the fact that life is a journey from birth to death on this plane. And that what happens between these two poles is absolutely critical, and how to get people willing to risk journey. And that is why Shalom Mountain was invented. It was invented taking into account that human sexuality is probably the most important, powerful force that is running in human life. And if this is not acknowledged, then it is not possible to keep going on your journey.
So from the get-go, the Shalom retreat process in Shalom Mountain had to operate largely outside of the culture.
As soon as one begins spiritual journey, one becomes countercultural, because one has to stand over against culture and ask oneself the question of why this is true, and why this is true for me. And everybody has to be acculturated, but then we have to spend the rest of our life unacculturating ourselves and finding not somebody else's path, but our own path. And Shalom Mountain is totally dedicated, one, to spiritual journeying, and secondly, to the fact that the journey means to stand over against culture and ask the question, why?
This seems, if I could butt in here for a minute, this seems to be essential to, I think, why Shalom Mountain and the Shalom retreat process is different from just because a lot of emotional catharsis goes on in a mat trip, etc. But there's the underpinning of the spiritual journey is really what makes this different than simply an emotional catharsis.
Or traditional psychology. In other words, Shalom Mountain is not traditional psychology. So Shalom Mountain does not say you are sick and come here and we will make you well.
Right.
Does not say that. And that's what traditional psychology says. You know, you are not well, and if you come, you know, for $90 an hour for, you know, a long enough period of time so that I am able to support myself, then you will get better.
And I will get a summer home.
And I will get it. Now, that's not to say that this is against counseling, because I believe that where there is love in any kind of counseling, where there's love, there's healing. And so if the healer is a lover, healing will probably go on. But we're now not talking about traditional counseling. We're talking about a radical approach to using people's isness, that is where they are in their life at that particular time, no matter how they are suffering, to find a way to hook people on the fact that they are spiritual in their essence, and that the spiritual journey is the way to go. So that's what Shalom Mountain is about. It is about intimacy. It is about teaching people how to love themselves and how to love each other, how to love nature, and how to love God. That's what Shalom Mountain is about.
And the Shalom Retreat was a collection of, and I think one of the things we wanted to talk mainly about today was what really goes on in a Shalom Retreat, what are the undercurrents operating there, and you came up with this process as a collection of various tools to help jumpstart this spiritual journey, to help awaken people and go into the dark places of their lives.
Yeah, there's nothing fresh and new on earth. There's nothing new on earth. All of the great ideas have been around for thousands of years. On the other hand, context is always changing. And spiritual truth has to become contextual. And so Shalom Mountain is dealing with great suffering on the part of human beings, because everybody who takes a trip through this world suffers. And so Shalom Mountain takes seriously the fact that we all suffer. And it takes seriously the fact that where we are stopped in our growth and development as human beings is not in the conscious mind, but it is in the twilight zone where we are stuck. We say, for example, at Shalom, that there are three great angels in our life: fear and anger and pain. And all these angels, we could not live without fear. We could not survive in this world without fear. We could not survive in this world without anger. We could not survive in this world without pain. Shalom Mountain teaches that what we have to do is own our fear, own our anger, and own our pain, and on that basis we begin the process of being freed from it. On the other hand, most of us were not taught this. We say, you know, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Don't be hurt. Don't be afraid. Because these are all, you know, power in the world if you're not afraid, or if you're not angry, or you're not hurting. On the other hand, if we have to then deny, I am not angry, I'm not hurting, I'm not in pain, and then these angels become devils.
Right.
Become the devil of anxiety, of fear of the future, of pain, which leaks into depression, and anger, which is not acknowledged as hostility. So what are the great enemies of human life? Anxiety, hostility, and depression. So what Shalom Mountain is devoted to is helping people to own their anxiety and their hostility and their depression, and to go down into the twilight zone where they are stuck and free them. So many people, when they get through with their first shalom, have a feeling, at least a taste, of being free for the first time in their life. They have looked into other people's eyes, and they have found out that other people hurt, and that other people have anxiety, other people have depression. They say, whoa, wow, hey, that's great. I mean, I'm glad you're depressed too. I'm glad you have anxiety. I'm glad you have hostility. Well, I'm not alone. I thought I was the only guy, you know.
Yeah. But it normalizes the whole experience.
So there's a sense in which you join the human community in a very wonderful way. So the process of shalom is, first of all, building a community in which intimacy is possible. Intimacy is both that for which we long more than anything else. We want to be seen, and we want to be heard, and we want to be touched. We want to be. And so in this Shalom retreat process, we can't talk all about it, but the central part of it, after the community is built and there's lots of love flowing, then each person has a chance to get on the mat. And the system that I developed was a system of putting a person into an alternative state of consciousness rather than the usual state of consciousness, in which fantasy becomes very easily possible. And the system that I invented was through breath. That is, I take we put a blindfold on their eyes, and then I say, well, you know, what do you want to work on? You know, so I said, well, you know, I hate my mama, you know, and I believe that my mama is the cause of all my miseries, you know, or, you know, I'm going through a divorce and I want to look at that, or, you know, I have a terminal illness, or my wife has a terminal illness. So that everybody has a beginning point of saying where they want to work. Now, they may not eventually work there, because once we get down into the twilight zone, that may not be it at all. And so the way we get into that system is through the use of metaphor or simile. And say, you know, let us say the man says, you know, I love my mother, but there's one little problem I have. I also hate her. You know, I love my mother and I hate my mother, and I want to get away from her, and I can't. Now this sounds, you know, simple, but this is a situation for millions of people in the world, that they cannot get away. They cannot get away, and they don't want to stay either, so that they're hooked. And no matter what they intend, it doesn't work. So you have to get down underneath and find out where they are stuck. Yeah. So this is done through breath control, first of all, to put them into an alternative state, and the second thing is to use metaphor as a way. So you say, okay, this guy's working that he can't get away from his mama. So okay, now your eyes are closed, and repeat after me. My mother is like A. And she, you know, and he said, well, my mother's like a mountain goat. No, I don't mean that. Oh yeah, you just said your mother's like a mountain goat. So now, can you see the goat? See, yeah. Well, now talk to the goat. See, that's how we get going, in order to find out what is not in the person's top of the person's head, but what is down underneath.
So image and fantasy is the language of the soul that we're dealing with, rather than the language of the head.
That's right, the intellect.
Right, which is where, and talk therapy has certainly been a very important thing to me in my life, but it is limited quite often in this way.
Because it's cerebral.
Because it's neck up.
And because you very seldom have a chance to say to the counselor, I hate you, you son of a bitch, you know. I really hate you. Very, very little chance to say that. But that's what you need to say, because this guy reminds you of your father that you can't get along with, right? So a metaphor has a way. I thought that was beautiful how you said it's the language of the soul. It's the language of poetry, and it somehow, some miraculous way, just opens things up.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I guess one of the things that we were eventually going to try to get at is how does it appear to me when I'm working with this person? So I will try to address that. I want to say first of all that I led retreats for 25 years, and at every retreat that I ever led, the guy who got the most out of it was me. Because I had a chance to traipse around in the region of soul, in the region of the divine, of the incredible majesty and divinity of the human soul and its complexity. And so complexity and simplicity exist as opposites. But it is a very interesting thing that when we are spiritually reborn, that it's very simple.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple. And we realize that all of the incredible complexity that we spend our time with is dust and ashes. And the only thing that really matters is, how am I feeling today? How am I feeling today? And today, what am I going to do with the energy that I have and the time that I have? What am I going to do with it? Never mind about yesterday and never mind about tomorrow, but right now. And people get up from there and they say, then everybody gathers around, you know, because they basically, this is also insight therapy. That is, people come out with a new insight of how they view themselves. And then, because how they view themselves has changed, everything has changed, because the people out there have changed. And so there is a possibility in every mat trip of a person moving from complexity in her or his life to simplicity, and to living not then and not there, but now. So that now I say there's a chance. I mean, in 3 days or in a mat trip, everything, you know, what has happened is a new beginning. People have a new beginning, and I see it. I can see it. It just happens. Wow! Right there, it's like a flower opening up on a speeded up photography.
Well, I remember when I went to my first retreat, I came in, and one of my complaints was, I don't feel very deeply. Another one of my complaints was, I don't really have any friends. Another complaint was, I don't really know how to have fun. And you know, after I had this little over an hour experience, all this junk, all this shame and grief and all sorts of other stuff, as you say, it just seemed so simple.
You dumped your past.
It's okay to live.
Yeah.
By golly, it's okay to live.
Right.
And in that moment, it seems so
You had a
simple.
you had a right to life.
I had a right to live my life as big as I wanted to live it.
And everything was changed.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that there's something a miracle. There is such a thing as magic. I mean, it feels like when you whittle things down to a very simple decision, that I'm going to take my journey seriously. I'm going to quit trying to control other people with the idea that if I could control enough people, then I would be able, to make it. And paying attention just to your journey, and how every day, how can I feel good about myself, and how can I feel good in my whole body, and how can I visualize in an altogether new way where I am going with these few years that I have traveling through this place. And I've seen hundreds of people turn their life around. Not because I was a great leader, but because we were engaged in a process that anybody can learn. And it is so exciting to me that that possibility exists not only for me to be constantly made new and constantly be excited about the next thing, but that it is possible also for a lot of other people as well. Now, I know that some people are going to be listening to this tape who are going to be leading Shalom retreats themselves.
I think so.
And I think here's what I would say to each of them. Trust the process. Trust the process that Shalom retreats are about. Stay with its basic principles. Secondly, give up the idea that you're doing it. Give up the idea that you are the greatest, or, nothing would ever happen if it were not for my incredible majesty and my incredible brilliance. And to see yourself as a process servant, as a servant of a process. Or you can say a servant of a spirit. A servant of a spirit. That you happen to be leading the trip, but there is something else going on way past you. And that is that all of life is moving toward health. All of life is moving toward health. And even if you are a lousy leader that day, the process is still there. And the healing is possible, is really possible. So I would say to anybody who leads Shalom retreats, when it is over, give thanks and get out of there and give God the credit. Give the Spirit of God, give the Spirit of healing the credit, and just say, well, you were lucky enough to be engaged in the process that day with all these wonderful people, and maybe you learned something yourself.
What a huge relief to me as a leader of retreats to hear those words and to have been trained that way at the mountain, that I don't need to be a paragon of virtue in order for transformation to occur with the person I'm working with.
No, because you begin as a sowseer and you're a sowseer when it's over. I mean, you are not nobody is a paragon of virtue. We're all just travelers, that's all. Right. And I spent 15 years of my life retraining clergy for the new age. And so I've spent a lot of time with clergy. And when a clergyman comes to a church, there are always some people that say, you are the closest thing to Jesus that I've ever seen in my life. You are absolutely, you are it. And the guy says, Jesus, I am it. Yeah. I am Jesus in the flesh. That's the first year. Then after a couple of years go by, they say, you know, you are a fraud. You are a fraud. I mean, you just have not lived up, you know. And then the guy says, well, I'm Jesus. And then now he says, I'm Jesus on the cross. And I said to them always, well, if you didn't say that you were Jesus, you wouldn't have to say you're Jesus on the cross. You accepted the projection of that. You accept positive transference. Now you get negative transference, and you ate the one, now you got to eat the other one. Right. And that's the way it is with process leaders in regard to the church too. I mean, in regard to Shalom Mountain. So with all of you who are going to be leading Shaloms, I just want to say, if you don't take the credit, then you don't have to take the blame, because all you are is a servant of a process that is healing and is full of love. And so I guess that's pretty much what I saw, because I'll tell you what, when you work for 3 days and you're, you know, fully present, as soon as it was over, after about the third or the fourth hug, you know, I got on my tractor and I took off, you know, and I took off and said, well, you know, that's that. And I didn't carry all these people around on my back, you know, so, oh, what's happening to him or what's happening to her. They paid money to be there, and I gave them a good shot, and now they're gone. Mm-hmm. And they're not on my back. Mm-hmm. They're not on my back. My meeting with them and my loving them was not real, because it was very real. And when I see them again, I'll say, hi, you know, get a nice hug. But the point of the matter is, I am not the credit and I'm not to blame. I'm only the servant of a process.
Good words for those of us leading this process, I think. At the same time, I want to say that we were talking last night a bit about how if a leader has not done his or her own work, they're going to get into some deep water real quick. So what's going on for you, or do you think is going on with other leaders when they're in an issue that's a hot button for them? How do you know that, and what do you do about it?
That's a very good question. I think that we want our leaders to be paragons of virtue. And I've lived 86 years of my life, and I have never found a paragon of virtue yet. Not one in 86 years. We are all sow's ears. Yeah. And we all have our wounded, we are all broken. As a matter of fact, I think we cannot really get going on our journey until we are broken. I think that the shattering is always the most important event of our life as far as our spiritual journey is concerned.
So if you're going to lead a retreat, you better have been shattered a few times.
Well, I think that the thing that people want to know about their leader is not whether they're a paragon of virtue, but whether they are real. Whether they're real. I think that of all the human characteristics that are important, among the highest is integrity. That to live your life as you say you are living it. Mm. Because people trust a leader if he's real, not if he's perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. They want to know, is he real? And is he living his life or her life
in alignment,
consistent with what they say their principles are? So Georgianne and I lived in a triangle while we were leading Shalom retreats on the mountain. We never lied about the fact that we were in a triangle, even though it was this was in the 70s, a very countercultural thing to be doing, and even more countercultural to say that you were doing it.
2 women and 1 man.
Right. So now, The point of the matter is, as far as I know, we were never punished for being countercultural or living a lifestyle that was different. Why? Because it's what we said that we were doing. We said that we were doing it, and when we got into trouble, the people knew that we were doing it too. We were in trouble. And said, oh wow, those are real people. They're in trouble just like me, right? Because a spiritual journey has not to do with being a paragon of virtue. Spiritual journey has to do with finding God. And that's what people begin when they come to Shalom Mountain. And the intricacies of what is going on between a leader and the person who is on the mat, the leader is a servant of the person on the mat. And unless her or his heart is connected with the person who is struggling, nothing will happen. Now, in regard to integrity, I believe that if a leader is not in integrity, nothing much will happen. And people used to say to me, what you say, anybody can lead a Shalom retreat who can draw flies, that is, who can get people to come, right? Well, they're not going to do anybody any harm, because nobody's going to do a mat trip with somebody that they don't trust. They will not do a trip that they cannot go to any depth. So they can, I say, they can, the person on the mat, if he didn't trust the leader, he can shake himself like a chicken, you know, that had been released and go. But nothing has happened. So I'm perfectly trustful that anybody can lead retreats if you can draw flies, and you will be trusted in relationship to your integrity.
Good acid test.
I think I've said about what I want to say.
Well, I want to bring in one more thing.
Okay.
And that is sex. I think we need to talk about sex, because
no
this tape's going to sell. We got to juice it up some way. So this will be the title, of course.
Okay.
But there's something about a fear that I have is that the mountain will go on, and more people will learn to lead retreats. But there is something essential in intimacy at the mountain being tied to the ability to look at our sexuality on a par with our spirituality, and vice versa. To be able to engage those two openly and honestly. There's something about that if we lose the ability to deal with our sexuality on the mountain, that we're going to lose the intimacy and a lot of the power of what goes on. What do you think about that?
Well, Shalom Mountain, I would say, among human potential institutions, has been one who has a consistent and a long record of acknowledging that sex is the greatest power in the universe. As a matter of fact, maybe the universe was born out of positive and negative, you know, or male and female. That the whole thing happened as a result of that. So that Shalom Mountain has been consistent from the beginning that if one is not dealing with one's sexual life with integrity, that their spiritual life is also not very likely to unfold. Now, they say, is this dangerous? Well, one of the great things about Shalom Mountain is that nobody has to take responsibility for anybody. People come up there as free persons, and the leaders are not papas and mamas, you know, saying don't do this or don't do that, because people are free. As human beings, they are not basket cases when they come there, and they're not basket cases when they left. They come there as full human beings who are responsible for their own life. But Shalom Mountain says you have a body, and if you're going to make spiritual growth, you have to own your body. You have to accept your body. As a matter of fact, you have to fall in love with your body. You actually have to fall in love with your own body. And you have to say yes. You have to say yes. Well, but doesn't this raise, the ugly picture of sex? Why does it have to be called love, ugly? Why not? Sex is the power of God. The power of God herself or himself. And so, from the beginning, Shalom Mountain has taught yoga. Now, yoga is probably the most ancient spiritual discipline that has ever existed, the oldest. And we have evidence of it 6,000 years ago. 6,000 years ago was an attempt to integrate the body and the spirit. How are you going to integrate the body and the spirit if you do not deal with your sexuality? And what is sexuality? Just like you have to ask who I am, you have to ask the question, what is sexuality? And how is it operating in my life? Now, sexuality cannot ever be a spiritual powerhouse unless a person falls in love with her body or his body. Falls in love with it. Likes to touch one's own body. Not just touch other people, loves to touch one's own body. And to find out how energy moves. And yoga is one of the spiritual disciplines that brings people in touch with his or her body and the forces that are moving in it. And then the whole process of your yoga is learning how to integrate sex and spirit. And Shalom Mountain's got a big track record in this realm.
Yeah, and we have often said there are no rules at Shalom Mountain. I think the reason that's said is that when we begin to set up rules, as some other spiritual communities have done, set up very strict rules about who you can have sex with, whether you can have sex, etc. It begins to shut down the whole process in a way.
Or whether the leaders can hug the other people who are there.
Well, a lot of psychotherapists are barred from touching their clients in most states. I understand it.
Right. But you see, nobody is a client on Shalom Mountain. We're a community of people who are there for each other. Nobody is a client. Nobody's up, nobody's down, nobody's in, nobody's out. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. I mean, the basic society runs on the basis of up and down, in and out, right and wrong. And so for 3 days, people can come into a community where in and out, up and down, right and wrong is not to the fore.
Yeah.
And that's like breathing air, sometimes breathing air for the first time.
Jerry, it's great to be walking this life with you. It's just another sow's ear.
You are a sow's ear, and you can play with my ear anytime.
It's a deal.
Because the sow enjoys you playing with her ear.
Well, thanks for what you shared. I guess we'll wrap it up, but just to say that a lot of the spirit that you've carried at the mountain continues. And I think Robert was saying just last night that so many, nearly all of the close, intimate relationships he's had have come from the mountain. What a blessing it's been for so many of us.
Well, I want to conclude by saying that I'm very thankful that I had a chance to invent Shalom or bring it together. But that's not where my life is lived. My life is lived now with my own disciplines, and I'm thankful for, all the past, but that's not where I'm working. Where I'm working right now is my own disciplines and feeling good all the time.
Firing on all chakras.
Yeah, right. Feeling good is it, folks. That's it.
All right, folks. Enjoy.
Thanks.
All right.
Fire on all chakras.